opens things up for you. And so I think that kind of resistance and collective resistance at work, has the potential to go much, much wider than that sphere. So I think, why I'm really stressing this point is I think in a time of recession, class-based unity is absolutely really important and really vital for our fight back. And when we're not united, that is the time when, we're most likely to be divided, basically. And we could see this right at the sort of start of the recession, when the oil refinery workers came out, and some people were raising this slogan that was quite racist, basically saying British jobs for British workers. And the tabloids loved it. It's like every time there's a strike, the tabloids are always the first to slag it off and say you're being lazy, there's no need for you to go on strike. And but this strike was, the darling of the tabloid newspapers, and the reason they loved it is because that was a really divisive slogan, and they knew that it wasn't going to build unity on the ground. And I think, when we think about examples that have happened very recently, I think they're a real warning. So, for example, what's happened in France, I think is an incredible warning for us that what happens if we don't unite, especially at this time, in a time of recession, when we are likely to face attacks. And on the, I think it was the 13th of July, basically this bill was passed in the lower house in France, which was basically banning the niqab in all public places. That got passed. Only 3 weeks later then, the French state sent the police into Saint-Étienne. They got 135 Roma people and they deported them, and since then we've seen hundreds of deportations. Now the ban on the niqab in France was done under this kind of rhetoric of, it's for women's rights and it'll be liberating them. And I think for the people that fell for that argument and said, that maybe it is liberating, you've got to say, well, what is it that they did next? Did the French state suddenly run this campaign to empower women, or did they go and pick on another section of vulnerable people in society, actually threaten to take their children away from them if they didn't leave? Is this promoting women's rights, or is it not? And I think it's a very, very important warning for us. And of course, on Tuesday, actually, the ban was passed, and it was passed by 246 to 1. So only one person voted against it. I think that's, an absolute disgrace, and I think that will have absolutely terrible consequences. And we need to keep that as a warning sign. But I think the other reason that it's a warning is very often the sort of gains that we make, the gains that we can fight for and win, can sort of be turned against us. And I think we've seen that in France, that the right to wear what you want has actually been, taken up by quite reactionary people, and being like, well, you can wear this, but we're banning that because that was oppressive. With no consultation with the people involved themselves, making the most disgusting assumptions, and also thinking that it's somehow progressive for politicians to tell women what they can and can't wear. If you look at the issue of the war as well, we were told by people like Laura Bush, who suddenly came out as this great feminist who was going to liberate all women for the first time ever, said that this was a war for women's rights, and really turns all the rhetoric about women's rights completely on its head to justify the most awful oppression. If you think about the campaigns that women have had for the right to express their sexuality, that has been kind of bought off basically, and sold back to us in terms of like, you've got the right to go pole dancing and lap dancing, and it's ironic now, and all the kind of things that we've been told. And basically, I think what happens is that capitalism sort of gets a hold of these gains that we've won and sort of tries to sell it back to us. So if you look at the way that like women's magazines, for example, address women and talk about women, it's in a very kind of capitalist, competitive sort of way. It's like, is she thinner than me? Is she more beautiful than me? Who's got cellulite? Who hasn't? There's all that kind of stuff. It encourages us to compete with each other, and really puts a kind of capitalist culture into it, and makes it not about expressing your sexuality at all. It takes that and through selling it back to us, says there's only one kind of sexuality and it looks like this, and if it's not like this, you're failing, you need to buy these products, you're inadequate, and kind of completely defeats itself. So the last thing I want to talk about is really why this is able to happen. And why is capitalism able to do this? Why are the gains that we have fought so hard for so often reversed and kind of come back to hit us in the face? And I think part of the problem is that the pace of change under capitalism is so slow. The Fawcett Society, which is a sort of campaigning sort of pressure group for women, has said that to solve the pay gap, which is actually illegal, you know, it's enshrined in legislation that there shouldn't be different pay for men and women doing the same job. But obviously everybody knows that there is. They estimate that will take 3 generations to get rid of if things carry on at the same pace, and it's just like, we don't really have that long. But the second thing is I think the way that capitalism does it is kind of like a monster with sort of lots of heads, if you like, and once you chop off one, like these new ones grow up. And to sort of sustain itself, this system that's based on inequality. I mean, you know, we're here in East London, and you look down the road, there's like the richest part of the city next to the very, very poorest part. For that to be in any way sustainable or tenable, they need us to be divided amongst ourselves. And you know, so I think what's really important is that we look at the system and you know, the way that they divide us amongst ourselves is obviously by paying women differently, by treating them differently, by treating black people differently, by treating Asian people differently, and the target changes sometimes, or the way that we're being attacked changes sometimes, but we're still being divided amongst ourselves. And so, you know, I'm really pleased there's a Counterfire meeting here that we're doing, because I think then we can also talk about challenging the whole system as well, because I think that's absolutely a crucial part of the resistance. All these campaigns are very, very important, but if it continues to be that once we've won one thing, you know, things get kind of bought off and we get attacked in a whole new way, I think, you know, we need to address the whole system that continues to do this and continues to persecute us. So what am I suggesting that we do at this meeting? I think we should have more feminist manifesto meetings to start talking about class-based resistance, start talking about this tradition of women's liberation around the country. And one suggestion, I did this meeting up in Doncaster where Louise is from, and one suggestion that came out of the meeting there was that we try and get the feminist manifesto sort of passed through union branches and things like that. And I think that would be a very important weapon in our armoury, really, because it's so sort of confident, it's not defensive, and you know, it really starts saying we need to start fighting back against all of these things. I think that's really, really good. And I think we need to go into the colleges and have these meetings, especially, you know, the colleges where suddenly all these sort of pole dancing and lap dancing clubs seem to have tables at Freshers' Fair and things like that. I think it's really important that we challenge that. And also, there's going to be a film coming out about how, you know, basically what I've been talking about, how women can resist collectively together to win huge gains. And there's a film coming out about the strike in the Ford's factory where women went on strike for equal pay, called Made in Dagenham, and I think we should be asking to introduce that film. We should be doing film showings and talking about it. I think it's an absolutely brilliant opportunity for us to talk about the resistance that we badly need today.